artificial intelligence is the engine. The fuel for that is data. Why do you think India has a free WhatsApp or a free Facebook? We are busy chatting. Who's benefiting out of this? You may have acoustic sensors, you may have cameras, you may have thermal cameras, you may have drones. But finally, the man has to be there. We will make a very big mistake if we try to replace a soldier with these technology gadgets. My heart actually reaches out to the Palestinians who are suffering on both ends. If they don't listen to Hamas, they will not survive 1 minute.
Yeah.
Hamas is actually controlling their lives. After Uri, that surgical strikes, and after Pulwama, the Balakot thing, I think the nation felt that yes, this is the way to do it, because if somebody hurts one, I'm not going to take it back. Down below, while our people were seeing from the post, they beheaded him live. You could see that. And then they used that head to play football. Our culture is that we follow dharma. What is dharma? जो सही करना है. जो सही नहीं करना है वो अधर्म है. You have inherited a neighborhood which is volatile. You have inherited a neighborhood which is bitter. अपनों से गुस्सा कर सकते हो. दुश्मन से सिर्फ दुश्मनी कर सकते हो.
Namaste, Jai Hind. You're watching another edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. Thank you for liking or subscribing to the channel and for sharing with those who you think will benefit from listening into these conversations. While we in India were busy with the Diwali and Dussehra festivities, in the Middle East there was tumult and turmoil. The Israel-Hamas war has threatened to engulf more than just that region, and it will have repercussions on many other countries. We have about 10 million expat Indians in the Middle East. They send back remunerations to India. An expansion of the war could have repercussions for India too, with regard to the economy and security situation. For many of us, the visuals of October 7th attack by Hamas has been disturbing to say the least. So also the relentless bombing that innocent Palestinians have to face in Gaza. From a national security perspective, let us discuss this threadbare with our guest today, Lieutenant General Vinod G. Khandare. After serving in the Indian Army, General Khandare served as military advisor to the National Security Council, is currently principal advisor to the Ministry of Defence, and has served as Director General Defence Intelligence Agency. I'm joined in this conversation with my colleague Ajit Dubey. Thank you, General Khandare. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. We will talk a whole lot about your career in the army and about data protection, and of course we'll bring in this book on data sovereignty. So I request viewers and listeners do pick up this book. It's called Data Sovereignty: The Pursuit of Supremacy, and it's authored by several people, including General Khandare. So we'll talk about this and about data protection. But first, I want to focus on what everybody is wondering at this stage, whether they are civilians or whether they are part of the Fauj. Is that what happened in West Asia? How was Israel caught unawares? We've all grown up listening to stories about the Mossad and about the hard state that Israel is. As a military man, as an advisor to the Indian government also on military matters, what do you think happened? How were the defense forces caught unawares in Israel?
Firstly, thank you, Smita, for inviting me here. And your point is absolutely relevant. No military should ever be caught off guard. And especially when you are in a festive mood. And that happened so many years back, and it happened again. So I would say, personally, I'm telling you that the present chief of Israeli Defense Force, I know him well. I'm surprised. And I'm surprised because he was my contemporary when I was the intelligence chief. I have interacted with him. I know how professional he is. In fact, in our earlier days, we have interacted of what is the preparation of Hamas, Hezbollah. He knew everything. So I'm actually surprised how did it happen. And the other part, the last two chiefs, that is the present one and the last chief, both have been Southern Army commanders in Israel. And that's where everything went wrong. Maybe at times what happens with us, When you know a little too much, you get into that complacency mood. Possibly, I feel that may have happened. I am not the final judge. That's for the Israeli Defense Force to check out. One possibility more is when countries and armed forces get into too much of technology. I have seen there how they have cameras, they have drones, they have autonomous firing systems, they have control centers right down to a battalion and a company level. Maybe they thought that they were seeing everything. Somewhere a tilt more towards technology, less towards human. What is required is a beautiful synergy between human and techint. Maybe that's where something went wrong. Otherwise, how can Israeli Defense Force be so complacent, and look at the price that they have paid, and especially of the civilians who had no role to play in this.
Yeah.
That barbaric act obviously cannot be forgiven.
Right. So I heard one expert on American television who said an somebody who's seen the region, whose opinion was that when they opened up the borders to bring in
Yeah.
Palestinians, so there were Palestinians who were working as gardeners, as electricians, as household staff in the homes of several IDF personnel. They were working in the homes of intelligence personnel. Maybe they were vetted, but they were doing that. And then they were coming in every day. And somewhere there was a nexus, as you said, that human intelligence was probably not all that great, even though technically they might have passed all the checks and things like that. But somewhere they were gathering all that information. They knew exactly when the gates of the kibbutz would be shut, opened, and the people who were in charge of the security, the armed personnel who were in charge of the security of the kibbutz, they went on air to say they knew exactly the Hamas warriors who came in. I'm not even going to say non-state actors. They were warriors the way they came in. They knew the time of change of guard. They knew where the weapons were stored. They knew the security drill in the kibbutz, that if and when an attack happens, with how much time it would take to go to the safe room, where the safe rooms were located. They had all that intelligence. So while you're saying that perfect harmony between human and techint would be something that everybody aspires for, here there were large gaping holes in that.
Actually, this is where you can see Hamas had more human, and I think they mastered that. And over a period of time, uh, possibly again, one more factor may have happened. When you look at the Israeli Defense Force deployment, they have generally given more priority to the northern sector. They
Hezbollah.
have, yeah.
Okay.
And they have given a lot of priority to Tel Aviv. They have given a lot of priority to such bigger installations which they have. Even their military deployment in the south is very less.
West Bank has more.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even the Negev desert, they have been planning for so long that they will thin out from Tel Aviv and get into Negev desert. It takes time. And maybe that was one more thing which the planners from Hamas and the external support that they were getting, they may have seen which is the thinnest deployment, which is the place where they can look at. Maybe that could be another reason. We are just speculating at the moment, but your point is absolutely valid. When you allow such a pouring in of labor, and again, that's a lesson for us also. What is, when you say credentials have been checked, what do you mean by that? Even in India, when you look at it, the police station is supposed to confirm. Maybe in Israel also that is supposed to confirm. How effective would a police station be to know everything? Yes, when I speak to the IPS officers, they say the nerve center of every intelligence is the police station. So they are busy collecting intelligence, but when you have such an enemy across the border or inside, then I think more provisions have to be made, and you cannot be lackadaisical to a level that you feel that they are scared now and they will not take any action. Maybe your assessments have gone wrong. Maybe your analysis was wrong. So they have to again get to the basics. And in our case also, whenever things go wrong, we say get back to basics.
Which is what?
You have to start from intelligence. What exactly is the problem, and how do you need to tackle it? It's not that you've gone ahead and you've reached a technological threshold where you say that you will start neglecting the basics. I
Okay.
think they have to get back to basics, and that is what will solve the problem subsequently.
And sir, you talked about this synergy between human and tech and going back to basics. Now, in last many years in the past, we have also now even in India, we have been hearing that now with the influx of more and more technology, deployment of cameras and sensors on the LOC and LAC. There is a possibility that we can cut down the numbers in the army. We have been hearing about leaner, meaner army, technology driven army. So, is that a lesson in this entire episode? Is this a lesson for us as well that, okay, you can, technology can help you keep a better eye on the enemy, but it cannot replace the soldier on ground?
Ajit, you are absolutely right, and especially in India, our terrain is different. In Israel, when you look at it, flattish terrain all over, and a camera can cover right up to a kilometer. In our case, there are folds in the ground. There are, even if you put camera in certain places, I will tell you, the streams that are rushing past, you can't even pick up a sound which is loud enough. Then the winds, the howling winds, so you may have acoustic sensors, you may have cameras, you may have thermal cameras, you may have drones, but finally the man has to be there, and the man has to be in charge of all this. You can't be depending on remote control and say that, okay, I will put everything which is based on technology and remove the person from there. Finally, whether it is, anything can go wrong. A camera can be blacked out. And when we look at our enemy on the northern borders, he has got technology to even blow up the electronic circuits. So I think we will make a very big mistake if we try to replace a soldier with these technology gadgets. Let's put it this way. The man is effective, but let's make him more effective by not replacing him, but giving him all these technological gadgets.
And like you were saying that our borders, because of the geographical, the topography, I've seen myself, like when you see the desert region, when we have the Thar desert region, you fencing to hai, but because of the sand dunes, you have the fence, and sometimes it's a hanging fence because the sand dune has shifted, and you can easily go under the fence.
Sometimes you can even climb the sand dune and you are on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, because the
Same
fence has
thing.
gone down.
The same thing
Yeah.
happens in Kashmir. The fence which we have put there, the amount of snowfall, there are occasions, and every year the fence is buried. And if the snow, and what happens is throughout the night, because of the wind factor, the snow actually becomes a thick crust. It can take the human weight. So when people say the passes have closed, doesn't mean that we are relaxing, because we know that over the fence there is at least 4 to 5 feet of snow, and people walk across, and that is much more difficult for us because it is freezing cold, and this crust enables people to walk across. You've seen in the last few years these terrorists who've been gunned down or who've been captured. Look at the clothing that they're wearing. It's absolutely special clothing that they are wearing and coming across. So earlier, during my younger days, people used to say, okay, during the winter, 16 corps will have a bulk of infiltration, and 15 will have nothing. Nothing like that. You will find similar trends on both sides of Shamshabadi.
When we talk about clothing and all, of course, we are going to think about Siachen and what happened then. You've done a posting there to tell us about the conditions there. And, I'm all the more keen to listen to your stories, your anecdotes, and what you have to say about that region because of, those visuals of those paragliders who came in.
Yeah.
The Hamas paragliders who came in, and now you're telling us about about Siachen, and it just brings back that nobody at that time thought that infiltration will happen in that region, and they came in They came in
the
clothed-
Kargil region.
In the Kargil region, they came in Siachen, they came in and stuff that we thought won't happen. They had all the clothing to beat. So you tell me about that.
See, I was posted on Siachen Glacier in 1988. And in 84, we had just established the post. And we were all struggling to consolidate. First, and when I'm saying consolidate, do remember that 84, when now Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni landed there first, and we started deploying our troops, it was extremely difficult because you can't have anything going up there except you're lugging it or you're para-dropping it. Half the time, whatever stores were being para-dropped were falling into crevices. You could not even recover that, even rations. So it was a logistical nightmare, and the number of casualties because of the cold climate were more than the what we suffered.
I'm
Because
going
of
to
the
interrupt you. For listeners and viewers, we have done a podcast with General Kulkarni. I urge you to listen to that and listen to the whole Siachen story which General Kulkarni gave us at that time. Sorry, sir. Go ahead.
So when we went there in 88, by then, Pakis had already attacked once, and then Bana Singh had taken back Kaid post, so that had happened once. Then subsequently one more event happened where 3-4 GR was there, and then Major KG Chatterjee had fought valiantly, and he got a Mahavir Chakra for that. So just at the footsteps of that we landed there. And we were the ones who relieved 3-4 GR there. 14 Galwan was my battalion. And we again faced the same thing. And I think in the summer of 1988, we again got attacked at Bana. We again got attacked at Bila Fondla complex. So it was a cat and mouse game. The moment they sensed some weakness somewhere, or especially at a time when the battalions were changing, they always tried their stunts. And during that period, we had to establish one more very high post. We called it Pratap. And it was an interesting thing. My unit had a very brave officer who recently passed away because of some ailment after retirement. Then Major AP Singh. He took a patrol and occupied a very high peak. And when he climbed up and the weather cleared up, he saw just about 50 meters below, the Pakis were also climbing up.
They were trying to come up on that
Same feature.
Okay.
So maybe we reached a little earlier. So how do I attribute it? Quick decision making and quick execution. So we were able to get there before them. And then we obviously brought down fire on them, and then they went running back. And those were the SSG soldiers. And during this time, we have to see what was the role played by then Brigadier Pervez Musharraf. He was the one who was pushing for this. And please connect this now. These dots have to be connected. I think he always felt slighted that he could not take Siachen back.
So Kargil.
Human psyche is extremely important. You can't put everything on paper, but people like me keep thinking that he was commanding 323 Brigade. He could not get it. During our tenure there, his failed attack on Bila, there were bodies which were lying all over and they were buried under snow. And we retrieved those bodies and handed them over back to Pakis, not from where we were, but we took the bodies back with full respect. And then they were flown to Kargil, and from Kargil they were handed over back to the Pakis. Not a word of gratitude. And we know how difficult it was to dig out these bodies. See, it is ice. You can see the body, but when you have to take out the body, you have to be extra careful. Because the body is now, in a way, so fragile.
Rigor mortis.
Fragile that it can break. And we don't want to show disrespect towards any person. So when we were doing that, we were absolutely eyeball to eyeball with the Paki soldiers on Siachen Glacier. And we took out these bodies then in the helicopter. And you can understand, the helicopter effort in those days was not as much. We could not even afford to have, but we gave priority to their bodies going back.
So this means, sir, this is a tradition in the Pakistani army to just shun the dead and move ahead with other things.
Yes.
We have been showing respect. In 99,
Yes.
we showed respect. We gave them, and they had just forgotten that these bodies were even lying there.
See, basically our culture, we are a civilizational country. our culture is that we follow dharma. What is dharma? जो सही करना है, जो सही नहीं करना है वो अधर्म है. So we have all been brought up right from our childhood days to teach us do what is right. It's not who's observing you, but do what is right. And that's what, when we were getting these bodies out, you didn't have to tell our soldiers that, be careful. Don't, it's not a store that you just throw it, you know. So that kind of leadership, that kind of following that we have, that makes our army quite good. It's quite a civilized army. You've heard of the raids across the line of control where heads are cut. Have you ever heard of Indian army cutting heads? No, we've never done that. We may take our revenge, but we won't be doing what butchery they do to our soldiers.
But we've heard about some journalists have seen the videos of the butchery that was done in West Asia. I keep coming back to that, sir, because
right.
it's something that has shaken a lot of people. What the Hamas did, and now what is happening in Gaza, the brutality of what is happening in Gaza is also shocking everybody. That this whole thing about revenge has to be taken. Tell us, as a military man, how do you feel that civilians have been killed? What is the Israeli mentality? Because you know the Israel intelligence chief, you know the people who are heading the defense forces. You've interacted with them. How do you say this? Because the Israelis say it's an existential crisis for them. They have to take revenge, and there is no question of ceasefire, and there is no question of any quarter asked. They are going to get their people out, those who have been taken hostage, and they will be leveled out. You tell me, where does the humanitarian aspect come out here? Because now all over the world, people are saying that this is a crisis now. You are talking about a country's defense forces wanting revenge against civilians, because the Hamas are civilians in a way. They are a terror group, yes, but Palestinians are civilians.
See, 2 or 3 things here, Smita. Firstly, the barbarity that Hamas displayed is absolutely shocking. In fact, okay, why am I saying shocking? Because they are known to be that. That's what Ajit also asked, that this is exactly how they behave. So, while it's not a good thing to say that one expects it, but one should be ready to counter them or to prevent such a thing happening. Now that it has happened, it has shaken up the entire Israel nation. And when Israel nation has been shaken up, one is by the barbarity and second because of the hostages. And how does the Israeli Defense Force react to this? Israel Defense Force has a very strong claim to say that below the Gaza Strip, there's a network of tunnels. And if there is a network of tunnels, that's where more rockets have been stored. Okay, you look at the record that Israelis have been claiming, and for a number of years, at times they say there are 130,000 rockets. At times that figure has reached 160,000.
Yeah.
And how many were fired? If you calculate how many were fired, people say 40,000 were fired, 20,000, 50,000. There's a whole lot which is still lying inside somewhere. And Israelis do not want their population to be targeted again with whatever is lying balance. And when I'm saying balance, don't forget that more is being manufactured and sent here. So when you said existential threats, this is exactly what an Israeli thinks of. He says, if I don't protect myself, my future generation is not going to forgive me. Their past generations have suffered. They don't want that cycle to be repeated. They are looking for those rockets which are in the tunnels. They are looking for these Hamas terrorists who are in the tunnels. How do you get to the tunnels? It's the most difficult thing for an infantryman to get into the tunnels and fight, which are all prepared
fortified
in a manner. So how do you do it? The only way to do it is to bomb them. And bomb them in which manner? Now, the terrorists are known to be using human shields. That's what they've done?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are the hostages now? Possibly in these tunnels. So they also are looking at these tunnels still being saved in a manner because the Israeli hostages are there. Do you see a plot in that the hostages have been taken? For what? Every time you take a hostage, you extract a price out of it. Were they looking for people to be released? No. They were looking for ensuring that Israelis do not react as violently as they would. Remember what happened in Kandahar when our relatives came around the Prime Minister's house and said, look, I remember how bad it was, where they said, look, this is a new year coming and year 2000, 99 to 2000 transition. Is this the way we are going to remember? Our children are there. You don't have children. Do whatever you feel like. So you hold the government hostage. Israel is different. In Israel, everyone has done soldiering because of the conscription method. They know that if they have been taken as hostage and even if they have to sacrifice, so be it. That is for the entire race, for the religion and for the country. I have a feeling that these hostages were taken by Hamas in a way to ensure that retaliation does not happen in this manner, and that threshold Israel has already crossed in decision making. And they are trying to get the tunnel, they are trying to blow up whatever is stored underneath. Most of the offices, headquarters, bunkers were below the buildings. Would you spare the buildings and then have the same people again come back at you? You have to be careful as a military man. I think the political decision and the military decision are in convergence. The political decision is that such a thing will never be allowed to happen. Hamas or Hezbollah should not exist. If there are these two fronts, at least one has to be finished. And then the military plan has been translated into that manner. We will not suffer more casualties by putting them into the tunnels without making adequate damage to the tunnels. I think that is the way the military plan has been planned and executed.
Sir, you talked about this strong resolve of the Israeli government and their defense forces that we will not discuss hostage, and I guess what you're suggesting is that this was also a miscalculation on part of Hamas that we will take hostages and is there a lesson for us also to learn that if a situation like this ever comes in future, what should be the national priority?
Do we do drills for this?
Now, this comes under the civil defense. Now, civil defense is controlled by the MHA. I know for sure that in the past few months, there has been some activity in the civil defense. I know there's a retired Air Force officer who's working in civil defense and he's been interacting with the Ministry of Defense also. He's been interacting with think tanks also and he's doing a lot to get things going.
No, what exactly is he doing, sir?
See, what had happened, I will tell you. In 1965, I was a small child here in Delhi. And when these air raids and sirens used to happen, the civil defense and NCC used to play a major role in trying to get the blackout ensured, getting people into the trenches. In front of our house, we had a trench. So whenever there was an air raid siren, we used to get into the...
In Delhi?
Yes.
In Delhi, 1965. There were trenches here?
Yes, in trenches. And
we expected attacks to happen in Delhi?
Yes, we did expect around that time because
Pakistanis... They come by Ambala.
They came Ambala, Jodhpur. And actually what was happening in 1965, there was tremendous amount of inventory deficiency in our case. They were flying Sabre jets. We were flying Nats. And Nats were the British aircrafts which we had inherited. We didn't have that kind of a capability. So at that time, Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri was an excellent Prime Minister. And he was very sure that he couldn't accept any more damages from what already had happened. What had happened in Kutch and other places. So we were going on even in Agra, there used to be blackouts. So we were getting ready to ensure that we don't suffer losses and we get back whatever we had to.
I remember the 1971 blackouts and the sirens and everybody had to go in. I remember my father had that Vespa scooter जिस पे वो black वो होता था and we had those brown paper covers on
that half light then that time you did full with a small hole in between
in the center and then brown paper covers on the bulbs on thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And when at the time of the siren we had to go and stand in the corners of the house. If you could go out, fine. If not, stand in the corners of your house because at night going out is also difficult. And clearly remember the confusion because we used to live in South Delhi, and General Yahya Khan had said, "हमने Nauroji Nagar bomb किया है." That was like barely a kilometer away from where we were. This was, of course, fake. There was no
Yeah,
bombing.
yeah.
But he had just heard of a place that's my vague recollection of what blackouts were. But I don't remember trenches in Delhi. In
65,
that. 65
I have
there was.
myself gone into a trench,
Into a
and
trench.
I know the shape was Z.
Okay.
So you had to just get into it so that it's not linear in a manner. If it is a linear and the bomb falls, then everyone goes into that.
So this is the work of the civil defense.
Civil
to come back
defense.
to what
This-
you
this
were
is
saying.
civil defense.
Okay.
No, what I was asking, sir, this is about how to manage people in crisis. I'm saying in terms of negotiation for hostage and the prioritization of the situation. Like if there is a hostage situation and somebody is trying to blackmail you, somebody has attacked us, and then so I was asking about that
Okay,
situation.
see how it happens. Hostage crisis we've had, then we've had quite adverse impact during the Uri crisis. So at that time, immediately we have an apex level mechanism which comes in, and I'm not describing more of it, but that comes in, and I have been a part of that. So I know whatever time of the day or night, people immediately get together, and then a decision or a recommendation is taken to the CCS. And the CCS immediately takes it. It's not as bureaucratic as it may appear, because the people who are there in that apex level, they are all people who can take action and decisions. And then immediately it is taken to the top hierarchy. That's where the Prime Minister and his four
CCS
other
minister.
ministers, they decide on how to proceed with it and what are the implications of it. How can we handle it as far as that management is concerned and termination is concerned. So the initiation has been done by the enemy. Now the management has to be done by us, and then the termination. So that at the apex level, we have a good system, quite agile, and things happen. Now, how is the nation prepared? The national resilience is extremely important. National resilience in Israel is remarkable. Whatever losses happen to individual, they are ready to accept it. Have you seen the kind of upheaval that would have happened in India, or it would have happened in any other part? As compared to that, Israel has had some protests. Some protests also, that is another lesson. Whenever you have a weak government at the center, such things happen. So a nation's resilience is also dependent on how strong the government is and how strong the character of the citizens is.
So I'm going to come back to the protest bit. Yes, they have held back. Most people feel that it was a big mistake on the part of the Netanyahu government, and they will have to pay the price for it. In fact, one person that I spoke to said that it's understandable that, once right now operations are on. So at the time, and Israelis have all been trained for this, that operations are on, don't destabilize right now. But it is an understood fact that the heads will roll, but later, not right now when operations are on. So there is that holdback factor on the anger aspect of it, which you were saying, is the nation prepared for it as far as India is concerned, because we don't have that conscription here, that training, that's not there, right? Immediate outpouring ho jata hai. But 2 points. One is when you were saying the agility. We didn't see that agility when Kandahar happened. We didn't see the agility when 26/11 happened. Is there a learning from those two experiences? One, that question. Or maybe let's finish with that question
Yes,
first.
that's how it has happened. And in fact, when I became the DG DIA, and then a whole lot of things happened. Pathankot happened, followed by Uri, followed by Nagrota, Sanjuvan. One thing after the other, it was just happening. And we were learning every time something new was happening, and that agility had happened. I remember the Army Chief, General Dalby, the Naval Chief, the Air Force Chief, the Director IB, Secretary RNAW. Dr. Jaishankar was the Foreign Secretary. And we all, and all obviously led by the NSA, Ajit Dovalji. What were we doing? We were obviously getting our act right. So these are the people who matter at that point in time.
Yeah.
And then what do? obviously, when the Prime Minister's nod is required, he has to be given options. He has to be given to say that you follow this, this will happen. You follow this will happen. What is the risk in each of these? And how is the nation going to see? You look at IB, they're telling you how the nation will respond. You have RNAW, he tells you how the world will respond. You have the foreign secretary who says how we will handle the neighborhood or the other
The
country.
fallout of that.
So you have all the people here. And that is when the decision is sought from the apex leadership with a commitment that yes, once the decision is taken, it will be executed. So that agility has been streamlined and it has come.
Okay. I'm going to quote something, sir. It's an extract from an article written by Thomas Friedman in the New York Times. He writes, I'm watching the Israel-Hamas war and thinking about one of the world leaders I most admired, Dr. Manmohan Singh. He was India's Prime Minister in late November 2008 when 10 Pakistani jihadist militants from the Lashkar-e-Taiba group, widely believed to be linked to Pakistan's military intelligence, infiltrated India and killed more than 160 people in Mumbai, including 61 at 2 luxury hotels. What was Singh's military response to India's September 11th? He did nothing. Singh never retaliated militarily against the nation of Pakistan or Lashkar camps in Pakistan. It was a remarkable act of restraint. What was the logic? Now, he then goes on in the article to explain the logic, quotes the former NSA in explaining why that political decision was taken. But all through admiring India for the restraint that it showed in a post 26/11 Mumbai attacks. Now, there's one view in India which admired that restraint that the government showed, that the military showed, that our defense forces showed. That was one. The second one was the anger, especially in Maharashtra, that this is what has happened. You being a Maharashtrian, explain this to me, that how did the political leadership, how did the forces, how did they react to that restraint order from the political? And there is another view that post Pulwama and post our strikes into surgical strikes, that kind of restraint cannot happen anymore. So these 3 points, sir.
See, firstly, Maharashtra, you're very right. People were extremely angry. It was like a boil. People had lost so many people at the railway station, in
Chhatrapati,
Taj, everywhere people had. And, everyone was expecting some kind of a retaliation. And then people started, I know for sure because during that time I was hearing people saying that what is the difference between what we are doing now and what happened to us in 1962? So have we reached that lowest level that even Pakistan can do to us what China did to us in 1962? This, I'm telling you what were the popular sentiments around that time. Okay, forget about Maharashtra. Around that time I was commanding a brigade in Siliguri. There also it was the same thing. They said, look, how can this happen to a country of our size? And we were saying that, look, we are a nuclear power and is this all that we are going to do? So whether you call it a restraint or whether you call it a paralysis, whatever you can call it, but we did not do anything. That is for sure. Were we still expecting something to happen with the international intervention where we gave them dossiers and we gave them proof and okay, maybe at that time we thought this is the best way to do. Let us tell the whole world that look, we have all the evidence. And what did Pakistan do? They said all your dossiers are nonsense. Despite the fact that we had electronic evidence on that, that we knew from where the handlers were making things happen. But that maybe that was the time or the incident or the kind of action or inaction that the nation possibly thought that no more. And that was one of the things when after Uri, that surgical strikes, and after Pulwama, the Balakot thing, I think the nation felt that yes, this is the way to do it, because if somebody hurts one, I am not going to take it back, at least from the national level. From the armed forces or security forces level, let me tell you, there have been a number of occasions when things have gone wrong on the line of control, and army does not pardon the other side. If there is something which happens, you retaliate. Maybe that is at a local level, all through.
There's no reticence anymore.
No chance. And even earlier, I'm putting that on record to tell you, maybe when we did surgical strikes 7 in a row, that was the magnitude which we had never done earlier. But if, let us say, in a particular formation something had happened, no commanding officer or no person there would accept it, and he would say, no, I'll get back at them.
Sir, you talked about the formations or units not pardoning the other side on the LOC when such a thing happens. Uh, you were also commanding your unit in Jammu and Kashmir, sir. You have had experiences in not pardoning the enemy for working against us. Can you please share it with us, sir?
In 1999, if you remember, Kargil happened, and again we felt cheated after the Lahore declaration, whatever was done to us. So we felt cheated, and gradually we had started making up our mind that these people cannot be trusted. That is across the line of control. And around that time, officially Operational Vijay was called off. But
So wait, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. You said Lahore Declaration, we felt cheated. Who felt cheated? Why did you feel cheated over the Lahore Declaration?
see, here is a Prime Minister from India who's a gentleman who's trying to make peace with your neighbor. He's taking such bold initiatives which can cost him his political career. We all knew that. And still he goes across. And at that point in time, the army chief is not shaking his hand. He's not even there. And
He's
he's
plotting.
busy occupying. So how does the Indian army take it? Indian army says, no, this man is not to be trusted. So that is how we all felt. I was commanding my battalion around that time. So I can tell you, my about 800 men also felt the same. And like I was telling you, the raids from across, they were launching. And they were launching using their military people, that is the SSG people, and the terrorists combined. And in February 2000, they carried out a raid at one of our brigade posts in one of the sister battalions, and they killed 10 people. They beheaded them, and they burned the entire post. And this was in Naushera. And worse than that was, they took a soldier alive, and next morning, down below, while our people were seeing from the post, they beheaded him live. You could see that. And then they used that head to play football. And then that man, Ilyas Kashmiri, you can go on Google and you can see it is there. Ilyas Kashmiri carries that hand and goes to Pervez Musharraf, and Pervez Musharraf rewards him, I think, 1 lakh or 3 lakh something in cash for having done this.
He's the man who fathered a child
In jail.
In jail.
Yeah. So this is the kind of people you're dealing with. And then obviously General Malik was the chief, and Army Commander was General Khanna. Our Corps Commander was also General Khanna. They all came, and we were 7 commanding officers there, and they said, look, how do you take this? So obviously nobody takes it kindly. So we were told, okay, you plan and do something. I'm not going into other details, but after that we prepared well, and in October, on night of 27th, 28th October, my battalion and my troops, we went across and we raided a post, and we were able to kill more than about 24 people. 6 were missing, and we blew up that post. We blew up because we wanted to tell them that you killed 10, and it's not that you mathematically do it, but the amount of pain that you have to inflict. If you remember, our previous defense minister used to say that if you have to get even with him, you have to inflict the pain on him to make him realize. And that was an operation in which one of my battalion officer, Major Amitabh Roy, got a VRC, and we got a number of Sena medals gallantry. So that is the kind of language they understand.
And this attack happened in February. You
Went in October.
Yeah,
with all the preparation.
You had a long preparation for it.
Yeah, because see, when if you go and do it immediately, he is fully prepared. And when you put him in a complacent stage, and we put him in such a complacent stage that he thought, okay, these people as usual will not retaliate. So that is the time when you...
There's no confirmation whether Ilyas Kashmiri is alive or dead. Nobody really knows, right?
See, that I leave it to the intelligence agencies to tell us. But as far as I am concerned, the point which you had asked us, what about the anger? The anger was something which had to be went out on them.
For the Paltan, it's
For
important.
the Paltan, it is important. For the Indian Army, it is important. See, I was, in a way, avenging what had happened to my sister battalion. It had not happened to me.
Correct.
It had happened to a sister battalion.
And you were personally involved in the raid?
Yes.
Sir, coming to what ma'am was asking about this 2611 restraint that we showed, after this article, there have been comments in the Indian media also. People are writing that the restraint shown by Indian government post 2611 gave India the well-deserved sympathy.
International
Sympathy, and it helped Indian cause in a big way. I don't know how this sympathy helps a country, but like you have been part of the you have held very important offices. You have been the Director General of Defence Intelligence. You have been the military advisor to the National Security Council, and right now you are in Defence Ministry as a principal advisor. Now, do you think, sir, such the country or the government at this moment, the way things are panning out, there is so much of social media coverage. Is there a policy possible where people will say that okay, we will not respond and we will get try to gain sympathy of international community?
I think there is a generational change in thinking also. I don't feel that the present generation, when I'm saying the present generation, all those who are involved, I don't think they look for sympathy. They say, let's become capable, let's respond to the best of our ability. And I'm not dependent on anybody's sympathy to say, oh, bichara. That bichara syndrome, I think, is all over. We have moved ahead, and I'm quite sure in my mind that anybody who's serving, or even, I'm telling you, even the locals in Kashmir who were there when we did what we did, they were very appreciative of it. Even now, whenever I go there is a shrine known as Khori Baba, and whenever I go there, I do pay my respect there. And all of them come together and they say, they remember those days. And that bichara syndrome, I think, just went out of the window.
So I'm going to also come to this book. And when we talk, because the reason is because we were talking about human and tech int and hybrid warfare. All these things come up for conversation. We had General Shukla on the show, and he was saying that, when you have a muscular foreign policy, you need to back it with a strong intelligence and a strong military policy. All these things go hand in hand. So I want you to tell me what is, firstly, your book says data sovereignty. Explain to us and our listeners what is data sovereignty and with relation to national security.
Look, Smita, we all have been looking at technological developments. And in technological development, we talk of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is the engine. The fuel for that is data. Why do you think India has a free WhatsApp or a free Facebook? All these platforms, digital platforms, why are they free to us? We are busy chatting. Who's benefiting out of this? The entire data is moving to whichever place the data centers are there, and that churning of that data, refining of that data, they get to know what is our thinking, what is our preference. Marketing happens on that. Similar things happen based on whatever is being found out from the security services. Say, for example, there is some activity, some conversation, some chatter which is happening around an airport. Something is happening around a military station. And if you are able to utilize your technology to filter that out and you say, okay, this is how the security services are functioning or thinking or responding. Let's assume for a moment that when a raid happens across the line of control or when some terrorist act happens, what do you think the foreign intelligence services are doing? They are monitoring exactly what is happening on the social media, what are the hotspots. They map it. They map that where is the maximum activity which is happening. And then they get the trends. They get their activity that, okay, if Uri has happened, these are the following places where maps are being downloaded. Or so what? Google is free. And Google is free for you. But whatever you are giving back to the person who is giving it to you free, he is utilizing this data. Now, whether you are an enemy or not an enemy, but at the same time, this knowledge which he is getting out of you is based on these platforms. So when we say data sovereignty, we are saying, look, internet may be free, internet may be global. And another thing here, you cannot remain like an island. You have to be part of the entire system. This policy that I have banned this, that's a local policy. But internet is global. So you cannot be moving out of that because
Sure.
there is trade, there is so much which is happening. Now what do? We must ensure that our data stays in India. So we have our data which is stored in the data centers in India. We can possibly start, maybe it's already late, but where is our version of WhatsApp? Where is our version of Facebook? Why is it not so popular as compared to what the Americans are giving it to us? Or maybe at places even Chinese may have given certain...
First mover advantage,
Yeah.
but we have not moved beyond that. We just accepted there.
Yeah. So this data sovereignty is to sensitize the people here that what you are getting free is not free. It is at a cost. It is at a national cost. And this we had released this book in 2019, and then a number of political leaders also started getting sensitive towards that. And that is when that entire movement, in a way, I'm not saying that it is only because of us, but it started getting traction that we have to protect our data, we have to protect the individual's data, and all those protection bills. And you see the kind of work that is happening. So many iterations have taken place. It can't be done in a hurry, because if you do something in a hurry, and you have to also look at, people have to function. You also have to look at the judicial issues. At times, the judicial issues also block the executive. So it's a work in progress which the legislature is doing, and a lot of bureaucracy is also involved in that.
So when we send this WhatsApp and it says end-to-end encrypted, that doesn't mean safe.
End-to-end encrypted is somebody in between is not taking, but what about the person who's running
person on the
The person who's running it is the owner. That's why he's giving it to you free, because he's extracting something out of it. At times, don't you realize that when you just said something that I want to go to Manali, and suddenly the messages start pouring on internet where you are looking at hotels in Manali or movement to Manali.
But that's not a human, right? That's artificial intelligence at play. Now
Yeah.
tell me the connection.
Now, artificial intelligence can work best if it has most data available with it. If it has only the year 2023 data, it will get some trends, but you add 22, 21, you keep going back. You keep adding data to that. How were you thinking in 2020? How were you thinking in 2010? And what has changed? What are your preferences which have changed? So, economy gets dictated by this data. So, if you have to really protect your own interests, the national interests, you have to protect your data. Otherwise, the AI engines which are there available with other countries are much better than what little we have today. So, your trade, your economy, your everything will be dictated based on that, because even before you take a decision, he knows this is what decision you are going to take. Your decision making, where it is data enabled, can be read through. So, and increasingly we are all talking
Data.
about data enabled decision making,
Yeah, correct.
statistics. So, that kind of a thing will happen.
So there are many people who think that we are insignificant in as far as national security is concerned. हम तो जम्मू में रहते हैं. I just have a carpenter की दुकान. मेरे को क्या लेना देना सिक्योरिटी से, और मेरे मैसेजेस अगर कोई पढ़ लेता है तो क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है, क्या पढ़ लेता है. Now, so I put this to somebody who is in decision making, that if somebody reacts like this, how do you explain what it means? To which I was told that this person is sitting in Jammu, his daily activity is mapped by some kind of an AI system. What time he goes to sleep, what is the anger in him, when is he most angry, what are the problems that he faces, taxation ki issue hai, Rohingya ki problem hai. So then they get to figure out what are the fissures in the society in a border area. You got it? That people in the border area of your country are angry because of, say, infiltration, because of religious matter, caste matter, and then that fissure is used by an enemy country, and it need not be a geographically sati hui nation. It need not be just Pakistan in the west and in the east China. It could be another country somewhere else. It could be a Soros for all you know. It could be somebody sitting out there. So any citizen of the country who thinks that he doesn't matter or she doesn't matter, regardless of age, sex, gender, anything, the data that they're putting into their cell phone, into their Facebook, can be manipulated and used, is what that person said. Do you agree with that point of view?
Yes, absolutely. Look, Smita, this is not something which is a revelation today. Internal cohesion has to be the best if a country has to become strong. Who said this? Right from the time of Chanakya, we have been saying internal cohesion is something, okay, your body is strong, you can take on anything which is external. Your body is not strong, and then you blame the other that he is stronger than you. So if I give you an analogy that every citizen is like a cell in that human body. You look at Chanakya's Saptang theory. What did he say? A state is like a human body. There are 7 organs of that body, in which he had started with head as the Swami and then the Amatyas who are the advisors. He is given everything like that, in which he is talking of infrastructure, he is talking of economy, he is talking of Dand, which is the security service. And in that he says that every individual is important. Every individual will either make a state strong or make a state weak. The involvement of every individual will make your country strong. But if you yourself are lackadaisical in your approach and say, okay, how does it matter? I am a nobody. That is the weak link in that chain. And that is what will be targeted. You look at China, the 3 warfare strategies. What is it? One is lawfare. We will not talk about that at the moment, but that is also important. Psychological warfare or psyops, which means you have to convert somebody's mind to make him feel that he is either useless or he is not as good, and the other person can come and rule over you. So that is psychological warfare. Or make him so complacent that he starts feeling he is all in all, and then he is surprised. So that is psychological warfare. And the third one is the public opinion shaping or perception shaping. In these, the Chinese have given 2 things to the cognitive domain. You look at how they are talking of human mind to be targeted. Whose human mind? Internally and externally. Internally, they want to keep total control over the population so that no fissure is revealed to anyone outside. And externally, they are getting into every individual's mind either through technology or otherwise. And that's not necessarily along the border.
Yeah.
If you are able to create turmoil and turbulence and you are able to tie down the security services and the national effort, trying to keep your internal cohesion in place, I think the person has achieved what Sun Tzu says, you win a war without firing a bullet.
Yeah.
So internal cohesion is extremely important. That is where the individuals have to be quite aware. In many countries where there is conscription, this problem is seldom faced because they are trained in that particular manner. In a country like 1.4 billion, there is no possibility of a conscription. So how does it happen? We have to keep educating the people, and social media is an excellent medium through which we have to train them. And that is at every level. That is in every age. That is in every profession. That is in every geographical region. So it can't be that I am so far away from Pakistan, so nothing will happen to me. On the contrary, you look at the areas which are farthest from Pakistan, ISI has been up to mischief there also.
Correct.
China has also been up to mischief. Not only India, you look at our region, South Asia. How far is Maldives from China? But look at what is happening. Look at Sri Lanka. Look at Bangladesh. Look at Myanmar. So it's not the geographical distance now. It is the digital connectivity which is able to change the entire focus
And
of
with
the
the
society.
String of Pearls thing, it is quite clear. And with the Belt Road Initiative, that they are not looking at just regions or countries which are attached to their border. They have global ambitions. And in fact, there was one, I heard this American expert who has been watching China for a long time, who she said for years I was watching, and I always thought that their ambition was for G2. Did not for the life of me imagine that it was just one. They want to be the one. And that caught many China watchers in America, people who have been studying China for 10 to 15 years, that caught them in surprise. And their Five Eyes, in fact, that whole grouping, they actually came on a CBS show to talk about just this. And we did a podcast with Colonel Pavitran on this, in which we talked about just this, that none of them, they were all caught unawares, that it was China was planning to change the geopolitical situation where they are the sole superpower, not sharing space with America.
This is the Oriental mind. When the Anglo-Saxons start looking at the Oriental mind, they always get beaten. You look at the early 70s when Henry Kissinger and Nixon went to Beijing via Islamabad. They thought that they are going to transform China into a democratic society. They gave them money, they gave them technology, they gave them everything possible in China and in USA. They gave them everything possible to bring them to a stage where now they are the revisionist power and challenging the American position. So somewhere they've gone wrong. And okay, maybe there was even an economic angle that they were investing into a global production house and making profits out of it. So at times it happens, the profits and the economy makes you look the other way, not realizing that what was being told to them, that it's not going to be G2, it is going to be G1.
Yeah.
And the only thing there I have an observation is that Deng Xiaoping had kept everything under wraps.
Yeah.
I think Xi Jinping, when in 2013 he started announcing maybe a little too early, and that may have upset the equation, because let's assume for a moment, hypothetically, another 20 years they had kept quiet, not shown the kind of intentions, not revealed the kind of intentions. I think that surprise would have been absolutely total for America. But because I think they went in for the 2013 Kazakhstan BRI announcement. See, BRI is what Xi Jinping announced. But you think the Chinese were not doing earlier? In 2005 to 2008, I was in Africa. Every country in Africa had so many doles which had been given. Stadiums had been constructed. Roads had been constructed. IT centers had, international convention centers had been constructed. Libraries had been constructed. By whom? By Chinese. And Chinese were pouring into Africa all this while. So they were doing it. It's only that what they were doing came to light when Xi Jinping came and he started making a public show out of it.
Sir, in this regard, you talked about this Chinese presence in Africa, Chinese activities around us, strings of pearls, all these things. Now they are aiming for G1, but in the Indian context, sir, the enemy number one for the last 2 decades or so, both for the political as well as the military leadership, is China. Now they may be having some issues with the Americans who have helped them in their rise, but then when we talk in our context, sir, where are we? Can we match China? Because that is the enemy number one. They may be taking on US, but that doesn't bother the Indian public as much as what they do on the LAC, what they do with us, the balance of trade, all these things. They've been in a dominating position in this domain. Now, are we in a position to match China? Because on one hand, we are talking about taking them on the border, whereas on the other, when we talk about data sovereignty and all, they have their WeChats, Weibos, TikToks dominating the global scene, whereas we don't even have a chatting app of our own.
This realization has come to us. You call yourself a global soft power, you call yourself a software giant, and then all these softwares are being developed abroad. So we are doing with our human resource a job for somebody else. Now, in the last few years, you would have realized that we are saying, no, I need to get Atmanirbhar. I need to do it myself. My dependency has to go down. And because our dependency was so much earlier that we weren't getting our money's worth also. See, if let's say I want to buy something from another country and there is a kind of a crisis. Firstly, that other country doesn't give it to you on time. He gives you at a cost that is prohibitive. and the technology is much lower than what you are desirous of. So there is a technological differential. Nobody can wish it away, and it has been accumulated. And because of that accumulated thing, you were a part of when we did that Swavlamban Shivir when the Prime Minister was there. What is it we spoke of? Sprint, in which we are talking of pole vaulting. We can't be incremental anymore. We have to go faster than what he thinks. And that is where there are major things which are happening. We could have just followed it at an easy pace. No, we are doing it much faster. You look at how Ministry of Defence has been moving so fast. What were the figures in 2011? What are the figures now? What is the kind of... you saw the Raksha Mantri when he went to NorthTech, and he said within the next couple of months, I will be announcing 20,000 crores worth of defence exports. We had set a target of about 35,000 crores. From 636 crores in 2011, we've come to 20,000 crores. And that is still happening. And our biggest challenge has been that bulk of our manufacturing and production and research and development has been controlled by the state. The private sector, even with less, see like the defense production, 79% of the infrastructure or the assets are owned by the state. Only 21%. And now is the time when the private sector is really gearing up. But despite that 21 sector, they have a sizable contribution. Bulk of the exports have been from the private sector. There are 85 countries which are getting things from us. Why am I emphasizing on exports? When you start manufacturing something, it can only be affordable if you have scale of manufacture, scale of selling. The price will come down, there will be more feedback available, there will be dependencies of other countries on you. If you are manufacturing only for your armed forces or security forces, you will not be able to afford it. So that is the reason when we say, whom are you preparing against? You are preparing against your identified adversaries who are two. We all know that. But there can always be potential adversaries when things go bad. So that is the reason we have to make it an affordable solution. To make it affordable solution, you have to design it here, you have to develop it here, you have to manufacture it here. Everything cannot be manufactured here, everything cannot be designed here. So we will have strategic partnerships. And once we start doing that, then we export. And we export, you get foreign exchange. So again, your foreign exchange reserves increase, which means your economical condition in the global market improves because your forex goes higher. So that is the point that I am saying, that it cannot be done in a day. It cannot be done in a month. We are pushing, and every person who is a stakeholder is pushing. And when I am saying Atmanirbhar, it is not related only to the Ministry of Defence. Every ministry is doing that. Because every ministry is going to contribute to the vision which the Honorable Prime Minister has shown us, that we need to become a 5 trillion economy. Against what? A 12 to 13 trillion economy which is in China. So even if you say that, okay, from 2.1 trillion, I am going to reach 5 trillion, and your GDP, which is for defense, is say about 2 point some percent. The real money worth by the time you reach 5 trillion is actually doubling. But again, bulk of it is happening for pensions and salaries. So these are certain challenges which a democracy will always face. An autocratic country, say China or Russia, they have stability. 10 years, 20 years, the head of the state is there. They have such continuity. In our case, the election, the manifesto, those are certain compulsions. But then we love democracy, we opted for it, we want it, we cherish it. So we have to find solutions. We cannot be doing copy-paste of what others are doing.
But at last, we are a country in a hurry. Some of our viewers or listeners might remember the time where there were ethical and moral discussions about defense exports.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
we should be Gandhian and we should not be exporting. Sirf uniform export kar sakte hain, but no arms.
Even today, that same legacy has come to a level. Okay, we found a change now. We are talking of BrahMos, we are talking of artillery guns which are going. But still, what is the maximum that is going? Non-lethal. So we are still careful. We are not reckless. We are not ruthless that Okay, you look at some biggest of defense manufacturers, they will give it to both the sides.
Yeah.
We don't do that. And if we feel that there is something which is going to be so grave, we don't give it to anybody. So we still have that, but now you look at the hypocrisy of it. And Dr. Jaishankar always talks about it. Here is a country which puts sanctions on one country and starts using its defense industrial base to churn up, make profits and give it to one side. And then it also exhorts the other people who are their allies and say, okay, you also give. We don't do that. We have very clear moral values. So I'm not saying that what was being told earlier was totally wrong, but you have to be pragmatic. If you are going to develop your stores and you are going to have diplomacy also coming up, and every product that you throw out and it is in combat, don't you think that Americans and Chinese and Russians who give this equipment, they are also learning lessons and improving the product?
Yeah.
So it is a live demonstration. It is a live thing. It's a trial. It's not happening in Pokhran or Mahajan ranges. It's happening in a conflict area.
Like what the major defense manufacturers did in Ukraine.
Yes, they tested it.
They tested it in a real war.
So if somebody tries to push us that, okay, go to war with Pakistan or China, you know what is the motive?
Yeah.
They're also testing whose readiness is at what level and what can they gain out of it. The point about people
Conflicts don't happen just because of one reason.
Yeah, and who's the beneficiary out of it, that also has to be seen. When people say that, modern day conflicts will be short, intense and swift. I agree with swift, I agree with intense, I don't agree with short.
Yeah, Ukraine has shown that.
It's evident.
Yeah.
And that too when you had NATO backing Ukraine to such a level. So if it is continuing, and when we were growing up in the armed forces, we were taught international fraternity will intervene. They will intervene only to sell weapons to you. So let's be pragmatic about it.
Yeah, things have changed.
Sir, these days there is a meme shared on WhatsApp, ma'am. You also must have heard that दो लोग आपस में बहस कर रहे थे, लड़ाई तब हुई जब वकील साहब आए. So there are international vakil sahabs who are busy.
That's a good one, and actually it happens. But Ajit, it's not today. It's happened earlier also.
Has been happened.
You look at our history. Raja Maharaja तो पहले भी थे, तो वो लड़े क्यों? Somebody came and made them fight, and somebody benefited out of it, and we went into centuries of slavery. So that kind of a thing happens, and only the British did to us is not true. The entire Americas, you look how Europe got into that, you look at Africa. So that's a part of statecraft. I think we cannot again get into that persecution complex. We have to be alert, we have to be alive, we have to be knowledgeable, and we have to say, okay, he's giving me free advice, what is his motive behind that? And how am I going to handle that? If I need him, excellent. If I don't need him, fine.
And like what we are seeing in Bangladesh today, sir, when the West needed Sheikh Hasina to be there, they were very happy backing her up. Now all of a sudden they have realized that there are certain human rights issues involving the Hasina government, and they
tried it earlier too with Sheikh Hasina, and she also, there is a trust factor when it comes to America. So she, I think her party and she continues to believe that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was assassinated and there was an American hand into it. So there's that legacy which is there, which she cannot climb out of that, and in spite of that photo op that happened in New Delhi, there continues to be suspicion, and you've seen the new Time article which comes in and talks about regime change and things
many a time the regime change which is initiated by some superpower also has some internal politics linked to that. So it's a very complex web, and one should develop that capability or knack to see through that. Only then will you be able to look after your nation. And many of our citizens are unable to do that. Whatever is given out, suddenly they start becoming quite paranoid about it or jubilant about it. I think what's taught to us in Gita is also to maintain balance, be balanced. If you are balanced, you are able to think through.
So how does one keep a balance when you have such aggressive and volatile enemies on your borders?
I'll tell you, Smita, one thing which I learned was what I narrated about that raid factor. So our army commander was General H.M. Khanna. And you asked why so many months. There was a lot of discussion happening. What should we do? How should we do it? So one of our senior officers, I'm not naming him, but he actually was jumping up and down and he said, "You give me this and I'll do that." So General Khanna just said, "Baitho." And he very calmly said, "Ek meri advice mano, which I have kept throughout my life. अपनों से गुस्सा कर सकते हो, दुश्मन से सिर्फ दुश्मनी कर सकते हो." So we remember that. When we are doing any operation, we are absolutely calm, cool. There is nothing. Before we go into an operation, there may be anger. But you shed it when you get into, because now you are doing something which needs precision. You need accuracy. You can't be foggy in your head. So when you said that we have enemies, so enemies से अलग ढंग से डील करना है, खुद का अंदर वाला अलग ढंग से डील करना है. So we have to be very clear. You have inherited a neighborhood which is volatile. You have inherited a neighborhood which is bitter. You can't change it. You can't just suddenly get into your car and say, "I'm going and plonking myself in Pacific." You can't do that.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with these people. And that's exactly in our ancient culture also we were told that they may be your neighbor, they may be your brothers. But if you have to do something to remove the evil, you'll have to do it.
Sir, you have been dealing with indigenization a lot, and a lot of people in our shows, they've been asking that we talk a lot about indigenization, but what are the main products that we have been seeing? It's like, since you have been involved in these projects, sir, can you tell us 5 or 6 main products that India has now and can be proud of, and
Okay.
both private as well as public?
Okay. See, you look at it. I will give you only the bigger ones. Okay. Earlier we were importing all missiles. Now 100% indigenous on day one you cannot achieve. So what did you do? You brought in a model of joint ventures. And with joint venture, which is for BrahMos, you brought in that. So you're in a position to export today? Right. You went into another one which is the 155 millimeter artillery gun. Now, how did you do that? You picked up 2 indigenous industrial houses and you picked up DRDO and they jointly developed that. You've already reached a level where you can do that. Okay. You look at the armor plated vehicles. Do you remember when you used to go to J&K earlier, the vehicles which we were using for moving our ROPs, they used to come from South Africa initially? Caspier. That was the model which was used during their apartheid time there.
Yeah.
And we brought it and we must have indigenized and we started it. Now the private industry is doing it and we are exporting it also. Right? That is one more thing. Now you look at the third thing where I'll take you to space. Everything that we were doing was something which we had borrowed from abroad, or then ISRO developed it themselves. Now you look at the private sector. You've seen our private sector smaller, these startups which have started making smaller satellites. They have started launching satellites. So gradually what has happened? The satellite is being made here, the satellite is being launched here. And why am I saying, while ISRO is a civil agency, the DSA is something which is meant for us, for the defense.
A defense space agency.
Yeah, but we also need the assets, no? So if we need assets and if the payload is made outside or if the satellite is made outside, then everything you are losing out on that. So that is something that we are looking at. Okay, you look at the ships that we are making now. The biggest one, the indigenous aircraft carrier. So you told me 5. I think that Vikrant by itself is equivalent to 5.
5.
No? And there were 100 MSMEs which took part in that. So there was a multi-ministerial initiative. After Vikrant was launched, the Minister of State for MSME and we went down to Kochi. We honored those 100 MSMEs because that is the encouragement that we have to give. So today, while there will always be people who will have doubts, my only point is a child, when he is born, he doesn't start running. You have created a situation where we have to start from a scratch. And now that scratch is in a way that we are looking at things differently. You remember the ordnance factory corporatization? Why did we do that? We wanted to energize that. And when we converted them into these 7 DPSUs, obviously they also know that either they have to perform or perish. So there are things which are happening. So earlier, if we were manufacturing ammunition, say small arms, the smallest thing, were they NATO standard? No. Could we export them? Yes, to those countries who didn't want NATO standard. But should we be giving it to NATO countries? Of course, we should be giving it. So let's first get to a competitive commercial price, get to a quality and availability. Today, availability is not a problem. You look at the CNC machines which are there. If their capacity is to manufacture 8 lakh round, they're manufacturing only 4 lakh because for them the captive consumer was only in the Indian army. But if you improve the quality and you bring the price down, you'll be able to sell it outside. Isn't Pakistan selling it? And Pakistan, when they became independent, they didn't have a single ordnance factory. We had all the 14 ordnance factories with us. Then why did we land up in such a situation? So this is the introspection that
Why
we
did
have
we
to
land up, sir?
see. A kind of no competition, total monopoly, the kind of labor laws, the kind of labor unions. Is it a welfare measure? Okay, you look at our 41 factories and you look at 14 factories from
The
Pakistan.
ordnance one.
Ordnance factory.
Okay.
Ordnance factories I am saying because that is low tech. I'm
Okay.
not giving them high tech capability. I'm
Okay.
looking at low tech. 14 ordnance factories of Pakistan within a radius of 75 kilometers. Where are our ordnance factories? One is near Uti. Then one is near Orissa. One is in Nalanda. Then there are a few in Maharashtra. There are some in MP. There are some in UP. Some in Uttaranchal. Some in Haryana. What did we do? What is the cost that is involved when you move things?
Why did we do that? For employment or what?
Obviously.
Just for pleasing
Obviously. See how
for
that
political reasons that set up this
1962
factory.
onwards, we started gearing up our ordnance factories. But where? Jobs. I'm not saying other things, but obviously.
And then sir, they also like these, when these ordnance factories and all these PSUs came up, they also had to do this 25 paisa chai and 1 rupees 50 paisa thali for their employees and all those welfare measures. Like I know it exists in some PSUs even today that they have to subsidize food and everything for their employees.
You know, things are looking up now. People are from the ordnance factories are also realizing, and believe me, I have interacted with the young a lot. They are full of passion. They want to prove that they are good. They don't
They're
want to be
competitive.
sidelined.
Yeah.
And when I talk to them, look, so much of area is lying waste around you, and you pay so much to prevent a forest fire. Why don't you create solar farms here? They're looking at it. The question is, if you create a solar farm, you're reducing the cost of the product.
Yeah.
Rather
Energy,
than paying
yeah.
it to, say, MSAB or MP, ESAB, electricity board, nothing comes free.
Yeah.
But if you utilize or monetize, so to say, your assets, and over a period of time, how does it offset the present cost? It will have an impact on the price, no? So finally, that is how they have to do. They have to look inwards first, improve their processes, and by improving that's not only enough. One of the most important factors for your defense exports is it should be accident free. If you have accidents, your credibility is gone. No one will ever buy it from you. You look at some bad examples that we've had. The countries in that neighborhood said no, never again from India. Now that is not the case. Or post-sales service. Say if there is an equipment which has gone bad, will you repair it there? Will you bring it here? Who will bear the cost? But if you don't make provisions for all this, then don't expect to be a leading exporter. I think we have to grow up.
Like in the past when we had given our ALHS to South American countries.
I didn't want to say that, but what you are
But
saying
that was
is
a
right.
very bad experience.
Very bad experience because the person who had come from Ecuador, he was a friend of mine. I had served in a UN mission in El Salvador. He was my colleague. We were both majors together. And I used to brainwash him that, Indian stuff, good, this, that and all. And he came when he became a major general. He took these helicopters and since then he has not spoken to me. His career is over.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming anybody for it, but I'm saying as a system in the country, we need to get our act right.
Sir, I wanted to ask you, like, you have donned different hats. Even today, you are an advisor in the ministry. Now, your work. Now, coming back to 2611, sir, there is this always this talk about that famous meeting that the prime minister of that time had with the services chiefs and intelligence chiefs, where he asked them for options. And it is said that in that meeting, only the Air Force chief, who was a helicopter pilot, said that we must go in for operations, whereas the army and the other chief, they said, no, no, we are not ready for a war. This was 2008, 2009. Now, you have served in important offices here, sir. You're still working with the defense ministry. Can this be an option for an army chief with Ajit Doval as NSA and
I'll tell you something, Ajit. All of us in the army have known all through that there are always targets which are kept selected. Preparation is already always done. It's not something which is unknown to any one of us. We at every battalion level there is something which is kept ready. In case you have to hit back, this is what I will hit. And we keep a core group which is ready with all its plans and everything is ready.
at the battalion level as
At the
well?
battalion level, at the formation level, then what happens? Okay, it is not a push button. It can't happen suddenly. You have to, because he's done something to you, so he's ready. So you've got to again look at what is the weakness that he has, and that's where I can use it. If the chief at that time has said, I'm not privy to that, but if he has said he's not ready for war, he may have implied at that moment. He may have implied at that moment. The same thing even Field Marshal Manekshaw had said. When he was told that we have to do something.
6 more months.
He said, what is conducive? You cannot get into a conflict and then stand up and say, now I can't handle it any further. You have to take it through right up to the end goal. So what is your end goal? You have to plan it. So maybe at that stage, what must have been implied or what must have been said, we all are hearing only from secondary sources. So what may have been said, okay, not now, but at a suitable time. Like I give you an example, February and October. So a country, again I'm quoting Dr. Jaishankar, you don't have to forget and you don't have to forgive. You have to do what you have to do in whatever manner you deem appropriate. I'm not saying small or big, but you have to have moral ascendancy over your adversary. That is final. And if the political and the military top bosses are clear in their mind that I may forgive or forget for a month, second month, third month, if it is appropriate, so be it. There is weather, there is production, there are so many things which are involved. Maybe the reserves were not enough. I'm not sure about what was being spoken. But I was a brigade commander at that time, but I was on a China front. So I can tell you that there was nothing wrong in our level of stocks and other things. Maybe just that there may have been a communication gap. No military chief or commander will ever say that we cannot go to war.
Sir, 2020, the world was preparing, including India, we were preparing for the pandemic. And all of a sudden, we started hearing news about the Chinese aggression on the LAC in Pangong, Galwan, all along LAC in Ladakh sector. You were in the NSCS at that time as MA. Uh, how did it happen, sir? And how did we react to it and how did we handle it, sir?
See, when COVID started, prior to that, we all on social media were getting what's happening in China. And we were not taking it serious because we never understood the implication of this pandemic. Then it hit us, and it hit us very hard. I must give full marks to the Chief of Army Staff at that time, General Vinod G. A lot of people within the army were telling him, let's get into it and let's get into relief work and we have to do it for our people. Very correct, passionate, very right. He said, look, I have to preserve my armed forces, my army in particular, if something goes wrong. I do not know why he said that. I do not know what was in his mind at that point in time. But at that point in time, our deployment on the line of actual control was exactly the way it had been for many years. There was no reduction, there was no increase. even I have served in Chushul. I know how it was during that time. Because the Chinese deployment opposite used to be always less. You've been to Nathula, you see how much we have and how much they have.
They have.
And all through, like initially in between 81 and 83, I was in Sikkim. What was the deployment opposite us? Like opposite my battalion, there was just nothing. Absolutely nothing. But when we look at over a period of years, we see that the Chinese were increasing their training activities. And their training activities, they used to mobilize, they used to come into the training areas. And in 2020, they came to those training areas which were very close to the line of actual control. Around that time, because of COVID, possibly we did not do an exercise, or we could have also increased our troop level at that time. So that COVID may have been a restraining factor. But even then, how we responded at that time, we had the forces going through that COVID period of time, not falling sick. Do remember around that time, US had 2 aircraft carriers which were paralyzed because the entire crew was down with COVID. So that's why I said that I must give credit to the Army Chief and the CDS at that time, that they did not get lured into something where the rest of the country handled very well. You see how every state government, every central government, health ministry, they responded, and we came up. And not only did we come up then, while the other countries have gone into economic recession, we've continued with our growth pattern and quite well. We possibly must have, in a way, been retarded some part because of that COVID part. Otherwise, our exercise should have happened around that time. What went wrong? They came so close to in their exercise area, and thereafter they came right up to the LAC. Did we miss them? Our satellite assets, space assets around that time were absolutely less. Now we have increased them to quite an extent. How was his space asset? Much more, much higher than what we have. So your intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance. So if we take that one part is human, which was retarded because of COVID, technologically you had less assets, so you got surprised around that time. Did you respond well? Yes, you responded well. Did you do something to make him recoil? Yes, Kailash range, ideal way to make him recoil. Did he yield to that? Yes, he yielded to that. Now, is he better off? Yes, because the infrastructure. Last 3 years, we have pushed our road infrastructure along the northern borders. What did the government do to improve the road infrastructure? You know, the government set up a defense planning committee. There are 4 charters of that defense planning committee, and one of that is infrastructure. I have been a part of it. I know how the NSA used to drive it. See the amount of money that has been increased to border roads. See the kind of mechanization that has happened. Earlier, border roads to a large extent was using only the local labor. Job opportunities. That was the approach. But now when you have mechanization, the best of plant equipment that has come even from abroad, even from India, the kind of road construction, simultaneously that has happened in the MORTH also. A large number of roads have been constructed by them also. Tunnels have also been constructed. Earlier, something like such a fantastic tunnel was only a dream project. But now you see the speed at which the tunnels are being made. People are talking underwater tunnel, Brahmaputra and things like that. So things are improving. Even now there is an issue where the working season in these areas is very less. What do you do in 3 months that you can't do in 9 months? Cement will not set. Workers will not be able to work for those many hours. Who are the workers? Most of them are going from Bihar, Dumka, Jharkhand. The local people, okay, they are there. There is a certain percentage which has to be taken. But nature has its own constraints over us. So, okay, the DSDBO road. People used to be very skeptical. They used to look at us and say, oh, you've been saying DSDBO road will happen. It happened in 2020.
Yeah.
And that's a marvel. I was in a place in Sikkim where we had to walk for 4 days to reach there. In 2017, I went there in one day. How does this happen? The country
Like,
keeps
sir,
working.
from Leh to Chushul, people say that it used to take more than 24 hours.
I was one of them. We used to move from Leh or Changla, go to Tangse, spend the night there
Yeah,
because you could barely reach there.
yeah,
And from Tangse, again you started moving to Chushul.
Chushul.
And if you had to, which you had to go on to the heights, then another day.
Another
So
day.
that was the kind of situation. And
And-
Chushul heights overlook Pengongso.
Yeah.
That is
And-
where action happened.
And like last 2-3 years we have been going. It takes hardly for 4-5 hours to reach from Leh to Chushul.
Yeah. Even the vehicles have improved. You know,
Yeah.
roads are one thing, but even the vehicles have improved. The latest generation of vehicles, even in the civil, in fact, that is better. You see the kind of taxis that are operating in that area. So connectivity has improved physically, digitally it has improved. So it's a kind of a race that we have to do with our adversary.
Yeah, but I could give a WhatsApp video call to my wife sitting in on a tank crossing the Indus, sir.
When,
Which you shouldn't.
No, just to show
After the discussion that we've had about data protection and stuff like
when
that.
I was in Siachen, Smita, for months together, I have not spoken to my family.
Yeah.
For months together. And in those days, we had to spend 6 months on the glacier. Now they have made it 3 months. But these were the initial days. We were 6 months on northern glacier. 1 month before that to take over and 1 month after that to hand over. But on paper it is 6 months, but actually it is 8 months. So how do you handle that? So even the families have to be very strong. You know, that
Yeah.
national resilience which I started telling you,
Yeah.
this is the kind of resilience which is there. They have not been trained for it,
Yeah.
but they have to live with that.
Yeah, I'm going to come back when finally to the same Israel-Hamas thing. And when you talk about resilience, this is the character of a nation to
Yeah.
show resilience in the in a time of adversity and such an enormous adversity which is happening. And now one can't just say Israel. Well, even the civilians in Palestine, you know,
Yeah.
who are facing this kind of bombardment which is happening on both sides. That resilience factor, while the Israelis have been trained because of conscription and things, they've been trained. In Palestine, that's not the case. You know, in the Gaza Strip, the civilians, they have not had that kind of training. What about that resilience that is there?
See, my heart actually reaches out to the Palestinians who are suffering on both ends. If they don't listen to Hamas, they will not survive 1 minute.
Yeah,
Hamas is actually controlling their lives.
yeah,
And if they become the human shields because they have no other choice, then they get a retaliation. So the civilians there are caught in that conflict between Hamas and Israel. And do we expect Hamas to solve the problem? No. Do we expect Israel to solve the problem? No. The international community created Israel and Palestine. The international community has done far too less than what is expected of them. And it's not that this is the first war. It has been happening again and again.
correct.
So when Israel got onto the world map, was that all that the world community should have done?
Yeah.
Or they should have looked at not having any conflict there? I think if I say in very loose terms, they made Israel and washed their hands off and sat behind and just kept watching.
Yeah,
I think that's where even in the geopolitical order today, you realize that at the global level, this is not helping. They've not been able to avert a conflict, stop a conflict, or manage a conflict. You can send peacekeepers there. I have been one of the peacekeepers. What do? You do separation of forces. So these two who are fighting, you say, okay, you go back 10 kilometers, you go back 20 kilometers. Then you make them come to a negotiating table and then you have a peace accord. From that peace accord flows the disarmament and demobilization. Disarmament of the rebels or whatever, and demobilization of the armed forces, and bring them to a particular level that they don't fight again. Has this happened in Israel? No. Who is to be blamed for that? The entire international community should take the blame for it.
yeah. Well, as we enter 2024, wise words coming from you, General. Thank you so much for sparing the time. Ajit and I had just enjoyed this conversation thoroughly, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners have gained so much information and so much knowledge, and we'll process that in the weeks to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Smita. Thank you, Ajit. Thank you so
sir.
much.
Thank you for watching or listening in to this conversation. Do like or subscribe to the podcast and also share with those who you think will benefit from this conversation. Namaste. Jai Hind. Click here to watch the previous episodes.